A little over 2 years ago, my husband and I bought a totally off-the-grid cottage and 4 acres of land in Spain, which had been very neglected for close to 10 years. Besides doing a lot of land clearance so we could see what we'd actually bought, we spent the first few months after owning the property sorting out a few basic things which would allow us to spend more time here: electricity and water. Our first attempts at getting these things sorted were not the best, but they allowed us to spend more time here and move faster on the project. 2 years later, we now both live here full-time. We both work on our laptops remotely, Mauro full-time, and although some aspects of this life are harder work than they would be in a conventional home, we have a system that works for us at the moment and lets us live a pretty comfortable life here, off the grid, managing our own energy and resource needs, and trying to leave a smaller footprint as possible. In this video, I'm going to show you the systems that we have in place that allow us to live and work totally off-grid. So in this video, I'm going to show you our setup as it is right now. It's definitely not the most ideal setup you can imagine in terms of how things could be done and what you could buy if you wanted the best setup you could imagine. But it's what we've got right now. It works for us. It's been working for quite a while, and we've got lots of improvements in mind, but I thought I would just show you how it is right now. So let's start up here. I'm on the roof of the terrace and behind me are our solar panels. We have 6 325 watt panels, which gives us a total of 2,250 watts in ideal conditions. They will never reach that because there'll always be slight inefficiencies, the temperature, the direction of the sun. They're a bit dusty at the moment, and lots of other things factor into that, but the maximum they could possibly be getting at any point in time is 2,250 watts coming in. We've got them angled due south, which is ideal. The roof just happened to be facing south, so that was great. They're at a 45-degree angle, which is about what we need for this latitude. I think we're at 40 degrees roughly. The first solar panels we installed, we actually just lay flat on the roof, or that's what the installation guys did. And we thought that would be fine, but we later realized that we might as well just buy a frame and put them on a frame and get a little bit more efficiency out of them by having them at the right angle. We also added 2 more at that point just to improve the system a little bit. Panels are quite cheap. They're the cheapest part of the whole solar setup, so we thought, why not? We can fit 2 more, so we added 2 more at that point. We're really happy with them on the roof. We think it's a good, convenient place for them. Some people think it makes the house look kind of ugly. I don't think that at all. I actually quite like having them up here and not in the middle of a field somewhere. But you can do quite interesting things with solar panels if you decide to have them in a field. I know people do things like make car parking underneath them because it's nice and shaded under there and protected. You can also do interesting things with using them for shade for growing as well. I've seen people do that. I've even seen places do that on quite a large scale, like integrate solar panels and agriculture. The solar panels feed their energy down through a cable that goes along the back of the house and into a little solar shed where we've got the rest of the setup, which I will show you now. So this is the solar shed where we keep the rest of the solar setup. We've got the batteries and the inverter in here. When we installed this system, it was before we had even started living here, and we really didn't know when we were going to start living here, so we installed quite a small system. You could even say it was kind of a weekend system. The batteries we chose are AGM batteries. We chose these batteries because they were cheaper than lithium batteries, and they are apparently better at holding their charge when they're not used than lead acid batteries, and we didn't know how often we would be here, so these batteries seemed to suit that purpose at that time. We have 2 250 amp hour batteries, but the way they're connected means that we get a total of 250 amp hours. It doesn't double. The 250 amp hours is about how much energy the batteries hold. To give you an idea of what that means in real terms, we're probably all more used to measuring the energy of appliances in watts, so 250 amp hours is equivalent to 6 kilowatt hours. What does that mean? That means you could run something that was 6,000 watts for an hour. I can't think what appliance could be 6,000 watts, but let's say a Hoover, a vacuum cleaner, is 2,000 watts. You could run that for 3 hours. However, these batteries should ideally only be discharged to a maximum of about 25–30%. Otherwise it really impacts on the lifespan of the batteries and how well they're going to work, so we can't really get them down below about 75–70%. So we actually don't have a full 6 kilowatt hours to use. We really only have maximum of about 2 kilowatt hours. What does that mean for us? It means that without charging these batteries, so overnight or on a cloudy day, we basically have 1 hour to use a Hoover and then we'd be out, or we could use 2 laptops simultaneously for 10 hours. That's roughly the kind of power that they can give us before they would need charging again. What we find in practical terms is that this amount of storage is fine for us. It allows us to run our fridge overnight, which draws about 140 watts. It allows us to run our laptops, lights, etc., charge things in the evening without worrying. The only time we have any issues is when we have a series of cloudy days, which doesn't happen that often, to be honest, but when it does, we will firstly unplug the fridge, because these cloudy days tend to be quite cold as well and we maybe don't need the fridge. That often gets us through 1 or even 2 cloudy days. Our next course of action would be to turn on the generator, which I'll show you now. The generator allows us to charge our batteries directly from the generator, which outputs electricity. It's really not the most efficient way to do it. If the batteries have got right down, we need to run the generator for about 4 hours to get them back up again, and that's pretty much a whole tank of petrol in the generator, which is about 20 euros. So if you had a lot of cloudy days in a row, it would very soon quickly add up to quite a lot of money you were spending, but it does just get us through those very few days that we can't survive just off solar. If it wasn't for the fact that Mauro needs to work, we would probably not even bother with the generator. When I've been here on my own, I've often just used candles and used backup systems that we have, which again I'll show you in a minute. But with Mauro working, when it is cloudy, it's just so much less stress to make sure that we have a fully functioning system and we don't have to worry about it, so we will turn on the generator. I think it's only happened in the last year, like maybe 2 or 3 days, so we're really not talking that much. A quick note on the inverter before I show you the generator. The inverter we have is a 3000 watt inverter charge controller. That means it controls the charge that's coming into the batteries and makes sure that they're charging correctly. I don't know the details, but it manages the charge that's coming in, and it also takes the energy from the batteries, which is in DC, and converts it into AC, which is what we need in the house. That's the inversion part, so it does the 2 jobs. The energy comes in from the panels through the inverter into the batteries and then out again through the inverter, so it's sitting in between, like in the both directions. You can buy charge controllers and inverters separately, and I believe the better models, like Victron I think, will sell them separately. The model that we have is called an Axpert 3000 charge controller inverter. It's not one of the best models you can get, but it's fine. It works for us. It was a bit of a pain to get it to work with the generator because the settings were a little confusing, and it's still quite temperamental when plugging in the generator, but we can usually get it to work. If I was buying an inverter again, I would go for 2 separate inverter charge controller pieces, and I would definitely get a more reputable brand, but it works. Behind me and behind the bag of goat food, you can see our generator. This is a 5000 watt petrol powered generator. We went for a 5000 watt generator because, as I mentioned, our charge controller inverter is a 3000 watt model, which means that we can run through it any items that are up to 3000 watts. We don't have many that are above 3000 watts, but sometimes you do, and for that having a 5000 watt maximum generator is really handy. If we want to charge our batteries using this, we simply turn it on, and coming out of the charge controller inverter box we have a cable with a plug on the end. We just plug that into the generator and that's it. The charge controller inverter didn't come with this plug cable thing installed. We had to get an electrician to come and put that in for us. We didn't know how to do it. We knew that somehow we could connect the box to the generator and then we could charge the batteries with the generator, but there was no way to connect them, so we had to get someone to help us and show us how to do that. But that's what you need. You just need a cable coming out of the box that you can plug in. As I said though, we rarely use the generator for actually charging the batteries. It's just a backup in case we need it. What we mostly use it for is getting power to places where, we need power and we can't run an extension cord, or we want to run something that's higher power. One thing I really like about this model is that it has an on-off switch, which at first I thought was a bit of a gimmick, but it's actually pretty cool that you don't have to pull the chain every single time. Just makes it really easy to use. I think that's the only thing I like about it. It does its job. Here in the bell tent, which is where we normally use it, we have another source of backup energy. I'm sure you've seen these sorts of devices before. These are basically portable power stations. It's basically a big battery in a box with ports on it so that you can charge and power things on the go wherever you are, taking this box with you. The module we have is an EcoFlow. We either charge it using some panels that came with it, which is pretty cool. We like to do that when we leave it for whoever's staying in the bell tent, because then they're kind of responsible for their own energy. They can take it out and charge it whenever they want. When we're using it for ourselves though, just keeping it charged for our own use, we just plug it in the house, and then it's charging through the power that comes in through the big panels, which is obviously a lot more efficient than using the little one. This box can power anything up to about 3000 watts, so it's actually pretty good for using a range of power tools. We do take it around with us rather than the generator when we want to use stuff further away from the house, as long as it's not a super heavy tool. So yeah, we're very happy with it. I'm sure you've seen other brands and other models as well. This isn't an advert for this particular module, but it works fine. One thing I would say is that I would be interested in maybe having something slightly lighter and smaller, because it's carryable, it's portable, but it's not super convenient. I'd love to have something that you could just carry in one hand for people to use down here, which they could use for laptops, lights, things like that. It really doesn't need to be able to run 3000 watt appliances down here in the bell tent, where people mostly just have laptops, lamps, that sort of thing. So something slightly smaller would be really useful, but this is absolutely fine and it's a really good backup for us. As I'm sure you can imagine, we also have a range of chargeable head torches, little solar lamps, things like this. We find these super useful because we're outside a lot in the evenings, eating, entertaining, and these things are really useful just to carry around, put where you want them. We have an outdoor bathroom, which I'll show you later, which we sometimes have to go to in the night, so a head torch is really useful for that. So all sorts of little things like this we have dotted around. So back at the ugly solar shed, and I just wanted to tell you where our power goes from here. This shed is on the back side of our little house, and from the end of the shed we've got a cable coming out which goes through our thick 50cm stone wall and into the inside of the house. This cable comes from our inverter, so it's bringing AC power into the house. Inside we've got a fuse box and we've got a little bit of internal wiring. This is something we've been working on kind of sporadically over the last year. We have a friend who's an electrician who does this sort of stuff for us. We don't mess with that ourselves. As and when we can and he can, we do little bits here and there. So we've got switches now, which was a nice upgrade that we did a few months back. We've got plug sockets actually attached to the wall. We've even got a really fancy two-way switch which allows us to turn the overhead light in the living room on and off from upstairs and from downstairs. We went for this pretty plated cabling because we think it looks really nice. In the kitchen we've decided to go for just like normal cabling. We thought that the like fabric covering on the pretty cabling would just get dirtier in the kitchen with like the cooking particles and smoke and stuff like that, so we've just gone for normal cabling in there. This is something that's in progress as well. Our whole kitchen is currently in progress, so once we know where things are going we will move these temporary light switches, light bulbs and plug sockets and put them in more convenient locations, and obviously plaster over the bits that we can't plaster right now because we're moving things around. We also have a light bulb and a plug socket in our bathroom, which is pretty handy, and we would soon like to extend this and have at least a single light bulb and at least one single plug socket in our shed as well, because I'm sure we'll want to charge things in there and use tools in there once we've got it renovated and actually working as a shed. So the next big topic is water. Our main source of water comes from a natural spring which we draw agricultural water from. We're lucky to have this connection and it's also free. The water runs from the spring through a long pipe which is partially underground, and it empties out along the way into several deposits which are located in different terraces that we have, and it ends up in this main large 45,000 litre deposit which is just in front of the house, and this is our main deposit that we use for watering our main growing area. We also keep one other deposit full of water as well for convenience, because this is the deposit that is closest to where we need to get water in order to get water into the house. We pump water from this deposit into a 1000 litre tank that sits at the back of the house where it's in the shade. and from that tank we pump water into the house using a little DC pump which is connected directly to our batteries. This means that we can get pressurized water in the house. At the minute this water is going into the kitchen and it's also going into the bathroom, so we have pressurized water in the bathroom and the kitchen. We use this little DC pump because it's quite low power, and it's one of these things that are recommended for like motorhomes or caravans or small off-grid setups, which we thought would be perfect. It works quite well and it gives us enough pressure to feed the water through an instant water boiler as well, so we can also get hot water. At the minute we have hot water in the shower and in the kitchen, which is really nice. The kitchen has been a recent upgrade. We previously just had cold water in there. Having hot water to do the washing up and to have a hot shower is really, really good. So we're really happy with this setup. However, what we would like to do is actually change the system a little bit, and instead of pumping water to the back of the house to this IBC and then using a pump, an electric pump, we would really like to pump water up to the top of the hill and store the water high up, and then we could do away with the pump that kicks in like at the minute that you need it, because once you open the tap the water would flow down from the top of the hill with pressure naturally because of the gravity. Doing this would allow us to pump water just once and not twice, which would be really good. We could pump water up to the top of the hill at the time of day that suits us, in the middle of the day when it's sunny and we've got lots of extra energy available to run the pump, and then it would be sitting there ready to use with pressure, natural pressure, whenever we want it, and we wouldn't have to run that little DC pump to get pressure on demand. We could do away with that part of the system completely. That will give us the peace of mind that we can get pressurized water whenever we want, and we don't have to worry about drawing off the batteries. It also just simplifies the system a little bit because we can get rid of one electrical component. We're in the process of making that change right now. It's one of the things that we would love to get done this year, so watch this space. So as for our drinking water, we actually get that from the same fountain that we get our agricultural water from. It's actually a drinking water spring. Lots of people go there and fill up bottles. That's what we do as well. We take about 60 litres of water bottles down at a time, fill them up and bring them up to the house. That's the water that we use for drinking and also for washing fruit and veg in, or cooking with, any water that's going to come into direct contact with food, because it's come straight from the source and it hasn't travelled through our dirty pipes to get here. The pump that I use to pump water from our deposit into the IBC at the back of the house is this one. I also use this pump to water the garden. It's a battery operated Einhell model pump. It sits on the edge of your deposit with a little pipe that goes into the water and a normal hose pipe connection connecting to the top. This is just to stop the pipe like bending and getting a kink in it. It runs off a pair of these rechargeable batteries. We have 2 sets of these that we keep charged in rotation. This is honestly one of my favourite things that I've bought and that I use. I use it every single day. I love that it runs off batteries. It runs for about half an hour and it can pump about 1,000 litres on one charge, so that's perfect. It's lightweight because it's battery powered. It doesn't have like a heavy motor or fuel tank or anything, and it's just really convenient and I really like it. The final pump that we have is this one. This is a Hilbert 800 watt electric pump. This is a new addition, but I needed to get this pump because I needed something a little more powerful to pump water up to the top of the hill. That's what we're going to use this pump for. It's going to run directly off our solar setup, and we've already tried it out. It's capable of pumping water about the 10 or 12 meters high that it needs to go in order to get to our tanks, which are at the top part of our land. Yeah, we haven't used it that much, but so far we're pretty happy with it. And again, it wasn't super expensive. I think it was around 100 euros for this. So I'm hoping this will be soon an integral part of our water setup. We do also use gravity to get water out of our main deposit and into the fields where we need it. Along the side of this field I've got a pipe coming down from the deposit with several of these taps in, and the plan, I haven't quite finished this yet, but the plan is to have this field done as flood irrigation, so have channels where the water flows into. So we would simply open a tap like this and flood irrigate this field along the channels and have crops growing in between. I've set up the irrigation for this yet, I just haven't set up the field, it's a bit of a mess. We also have gravity fed drip irrigation coming to a bunch of trees in another field. I'm not going to turn it on right now because it's really hot. The water in here is going to be super hot and it's going to scald the roots of the plant, but early in the mornings or in the evenings we can open a little tap and we get water coming through from our main deposit, just feeding through these pipes through gravity and coming out little holes and irrigating a bunch of trees in this field. This is something I'm planning to extend in other areas of the garden as well. We've got lots of fruit trees that still need this putting in, but yeah, just haven't got around to it yet. This behind me is our bathroom. It's an outdoor bathroom in the sense that you do have to take a tiny little trip outside in order to get to it, but it's only a few meters and it's really not a problem for us at all. Inside we have a composting toilet built into a wooden unit. We really love this system because it's simple to install, and most importantly it means that the nutrients that we're eliminating can be returned to the soil. We're capturing them, we're not sending them into a sewerage system to be a problem for somebody else. Human waste is a really great fertilizer. You can compost it down and you can use it back onto your garden. If it's done correctly, it's completely safe to do. Urine can actually be mixed immediately with water as a kind of immediate sprinkle on fertilizer. We usually don't bother doing that. We usually just put it straight on the compost as well with everything else. But that's also a really great advantage of capturing your urine. We separate the dry stuff from the wet stuff, the poo from the wee basically. This means that the dry stuff doesn't smell. It's actually the mixture of like liquid and wet stuff making this slurry sludge that smells really bad. If you separate those two components, you don't get a smell at all. We use a mixture of ash from our fire and sawdust, which we either collect from the guy who sells us wood, or we just collect it as we're chopping, sawing things. We sprinkle that mixture on top of the poop to cover it up and make it a bit more pleasant for the next person, and just to absorb any moisture that might be in there, which also stops smells from forming. And I can tell you it really doesn't smell at all. We find ourselves emptying the wee container probably about once a day, and the poop container about once a week. I actually much prefer this system to cleaning a conventional toilet. It just doesn't feel as gross, you know? I used to hate getting my hand down the toilet and cleaning all around the rim and everything. It was just horrible, but this really, you just empty it out, put a layer of sawdust and ashes at the bottom again, ready for the next time, and you're good to go. It's quick, it's easy, it's ecological, you're capturing your nutrients within your system, you're returning stuff to the soil, and I really wouldn't want any other system. I'm really glad that this is what we've got and that the house didn't come with a septic system. Talking of septic systems and drainage, we don't have a septic system at all because all our black waste, black water as you would call it, we don't really produce. It just goes straight in the compost. So the only water that comes out of our house is the shower water and water from the sinks. In both cases, we make sure to use a really gentle, ecological, biodegradable soap, both for washing up and in the shower. It does mean that it's maybe not as strong as your fairy liquid and stuff like that, but it means that we're happy sending that water straight onto compost piles, and that's exactly what we do. The water that comes out of our kitchen sink comes out through a hole in the back of the kitchen, just here, and it goes into a pipe that goes very slightly underground and comes out and drains into a compost pile. The water from our sink we collect in a bucket because I don't know what's going on with the plumbing here and I haven't sorted it out. So we just collect that in a bucket and also chuck that onto the compost. The soap we use in the bathroom is purely natural ingredients. It's an olive oil based soap, so there's nothing nasty going on our compost from that. The shower water, well, when we started renovating this room into the bathroom, there was actually already a drain in the floor where we wanted to put the shower. I think that's what people have been planning to do there already. And we figured out that that drain came out just a few meters away on the other side of a little stone wall and drained into next door's field. So that water actually goes off our land. I'm not really sure what's going on there. Nobody uses that land. It's completely abandoned. What we sometimes do is collect the shower water in a bucket so that we can capture it and chuck it on our compost, otherwise it's just lost in next door's field. However, it does seem to be watering a pretty productive olive and carob tree, so I guess it's not too bad. But again, in the bathroom we make sure that we're using just really natural ecological products that are biodegradable so that we're not chucking anything nasty into next door's field. So we heat our house with wood. It's May now, so I haven't been here for a while. We haven't used our wood stove for a little while, and I've literally just realised how overgrown this area is. I really need to tidy this up. We have a little wood stove in our living room. Our house is really only like one room up and one room down, so we have one stove. It heats our living room, and in the last couple of years we have been doing a mix of buying firewood and chopping our own. We do supply all our own kindling. We use dried asparagus and pine cones as fire starters. We use a lot of old pieces of pallet wood if it's only been heat treated as well. Pallet wood is usually made of pine and it burns really well, and it's good for getting the fire started. Over the last couple of years we've spent on average, I think, each year about 300 euros on firewood. But this last kind of winter period and still now, we're putting a lot more effort into cutting a lot of our own wood. Mauro has been out a few times to collect wood from farms where they're cutting down a lot of old trees, and we've got a lot of free wood that way. So we don't think this year we're going to have to do a firewood order. I think we've got enough stashed away here. Behind me we've got about 2 tons worth. We worked out that one little shed section holds about a ton. And we've still got this massive pile here that we need to deal with, and another pile behind the house. We've discovered that it's very possible to live and heat your house throughout winter without paying for firewood. It's really just a matter of time versus convenience. When we've paid for it, it's because we just haven't had the time to go out and chop it ourselves. But if you do have the time and you've got the inclination, you definitely can find free wood everywhere, and probably plenty from your own property as well. We also have a small stove in Mauro's office. This is a really cute, lovely little stove. I really like it. We use it in the winter when it's really cold, when Mauro is in there working, because the heat from the main stove doesn't really get into this room just because of the way the rooms are organised. It would also be a waste to heat the living room when we really only need this little box room heated. It's a really cute, efficient, powerful little stove. It's perhaps a little bit too powerful. It draws really fiercely, so we'd like to put a baffle in here at some point. But for the time being, it's really great that Mauro can just light a little stove in his office and be warm. So what bills and costs do we have on a monthly basis living here in this off-grid property? Well, as you can see behind me, we do use gas. We've got some butane canisters here. We use gas to heat our hot water in our instant hot water heater, and we also use it to power a little 3-ring gas stove in the kitchen. Although we have plans to move away from gas entirely, both in the kitchen and the shower, and heat with the sun and with fire, those plans are still just plans, and it's something we'll be working towards over the next few years, but at the moment we do still rely on a bit of gas. Having said that, we really don't use very much. I would say that I buy a new canister which costs about 20 euros every 2 or 3 months, I would say. So being conservative, let's say we have about a 10 euro a month bill, as it were, for gas. Our main monthly cost actually is our internet connection. This is a satellite internet connection, and it's provided by a company called Eurona. We pay 45 euros a month for our connection. We also do have mobile phone contracts with 4G, which works here as well. We rely on that quite a lot as well, but I'm not including that cost in our household bills. This satellite connection works really well for us, but we find that it has a really slow upload speed and a slight latency, which means it has about a second of delay when it's uploading and downloading content. So for video calls and stuff like that, you do notice a slight second of delay. That tends to just be the case with any satellite system, although I think you can pay more for slightly better speeds, but this was a good middle ground for us, which lets us work and is not crazy expensive. It's very windy up here, so I'm going to get down. And then one other regular bill that we have is our property tax. Where we live is actually made up of 2 main properties. We've got the plot with the house on it, which is where we live, our little stone house, and we've got a plot with a ruin on it next door. We pay tax on both of those. It's about 50 euros a year on each plot. It's very cheap. It's nothing like council tax in the UK. So I'm working that out at roughly 8 extra euros a month that we pay on taxes. So all of that adds up to roughly 70 euros a month, which is where I got that figure from. But I'm not saying that's all we spend. Obviously we've got the car, we've got costs associated with that, diesel, we've got food, we still buy food, and other costs associated with maintenance of some of these systems and improvements to some of these systems. Of course there was an upfront cost to a lot of this stuff as well, the solar setup, the various pumps and deposits and pipes and things that you've seen. But the great thing about buying a property that needed a lot of work is that we had the money spare to invest in some of those systems which would allow us to live like this and be a little bit more independent in some of these things. It's not all about the money though. It's also worth bearing in mind that being more independent with some of these systems and managing some of this stuff for yourself, your water, your energy, etc., comes with an added cost in your time. We've spent a lot of time thinking, rearranging, redoing, installing some of these systems, and we've got a lot more to go as well to get these running a little bit better for us. We've been learning about all of this stuff as we've gone along as well, so a lot of things we've done and set up haven't been done in the best way. That also adds a bit of stress to the situation, because often you're worrying about, well, will I have enough power today because I can't get my generator to work with my solar setup because I really don't know how it works, or will I have enough water to get through the summer because I don't know if I've stored enough, and I don't know why the pipes that I've installed keep getting blocked. You've got to balance all of that time, energy, worry with the convenience of just living on the grid, I guess, and not having to worry about all of that stuff. But this is what we've chosen. This is how it works for us. I hope this video has been useful. I will leave in the description a list of all the components that you've seen, roughly, some of the costs if I can remember them, links to where you might want to look at or buy some of this stuff if I can find them, and yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. I hope you've enjoyed the video.